Okay, so by now, hopefully you've taken the time to reorganize the paragraph after the Scottish Railways in the following unordered list. And once we save that and refresh the screen here, you'll see the list is reformatted. So that's great. There are some other interesting things we can do to add a little bit more a structure to our document. Or a little bit more, sometimes what we call a semantic meaning to our document. So for example, let's say we have a desire to say strongly or emphasize a certain word within a paragraph. So say, for example, we would like to emphasize the fact that the rates for the railway fare rates must increase. So what I can do is I can surround the word increase with something called the emphasis element. So I cut that out, and this is surrounds then the word here inside of the paragraph. So it's nested inside the paragraph element. And this is perhaps a good way to explain the difference between what we call block level elements. So this paragraph is a block of content that itself renders on its forces a line break and before and after the content on the page. So this here is called an inline element. So this is where we're marking up with HTML tags content within a larger block level element. But this will not force a line break, obviously, because it has to sit within the flow of the sentence inside the paragraph. So if I save that, you'll see we'll get an interesting effect. So this is the word here, and if I refresh the page, you'll see that this is now the default styles of the browser are to apply italics or italicize the text within the emphasis element. We can change that in CSS if we wish. We don't need to. So let's also we'll move into the second. We'll say the postponement of an increase even until after the holiday season. So maybe we want to emphasize the word after. And to do that, you just simply read the content and where it makes sense. That's where you would apply those things. So let's, where's the word? Here we go. Here's after. So I would apply this here, EM, and cut that out here and apply that there. Save back to my browser and reload the page in the browser, and then we'll see after. Now, perhaps I want to add a bit emphasis, but I want to add maybe a heavier emphasis. So railways affected by this fare increase in England include the, and then listing. So I really want to drive home the fact that we're dealing with English railways and Scottish railways down here. So we'll take head down here, and I'll say instead of surrounding England with emphasis, I'll surround it with an element called strong, which refers to strong emphasis. So I'll surround the word England with those tags, save the changes to the file, reload the page, and there we go. So similarly, I guess I'd want to probably follow up and do the same thing with this paragraph here. There's the changed code for in the paragraph containing the word Scotland. So again, strong is an inline element. It doesn't force a line break, I'll save that and then refresh the page. So the emphasis element remains in line with the other content inside the parent node, which is the paragraph element. So there we go. Okay, so that's great. So and this is terrific. We have a page here. We've taken a piece of text, which is an old newspaper article. We've added some metadata, structured the page, added a document outline with some headings. So we have a heading level and a clear kind of hierarchy through the content. What I'd like to do is add a little bit more in the way of page structure. So HTML or modern HTML allows us to even define kind of content areas within the body, and those content areas make sense kind of in what we call they're called sectioning elements. So sectioning elements do just that. They section out different parts of the page in terms of their purpose. So what we might say is, okay, the top end of the page here, this is a kind of a page level header, or kind of the masthead of the page. This would be the, say, if you were on if the Ottawa Evening Citizen had an online version back then, this would be the kind of the top of the browser. So application. So what we'll do is we'll add, I'll add first a comment up here just to keep things organized, and I'll say page header. And HTML comments are great to kind of organize and label different pieces of the template. And so what I do is add an element here called the header. And that is a child of the body element. But then, of course, this H1 and this paragraph now sort of become children of the header. So now we have a page header. This is called a page level header. So we can add headers to other HTML elements, but this is inside the body. This we call our page level header. The main content of the page, we also have a sectioning element that is appropriate for that, and it's strangely enough called simply the main element. And I would say, well, this here, the main article consists of the article heading. In this case, we'll throw the image in there and the two paragraphs here. So I'll close out the main element here. I'll tab in this paragraph. I'll tab in this paragraph. I'll tab in the image, and I'll tab in the H2. So now the main part of the page consists of a heading for the article, the H2, an image, and a couple of paragraphs. Now, this other information here is kind of tangentially related. So the fact that we provided some other information about local railways in Britain that are affected by this. It's kind of an aside, is what we might call it. So it's related to the main article, but it's only kind of in kind of a roundabout kind of way. So what we'll do is we'll add an element called an aside in here, and I can surround both of these elements here, and I'll just go down. And if you hold down the Shift key and hit the up arrow key for your cursor, you can highlight multiple lines. Most code editors do this, and then you can simply hit the Tab key once, and that entire structure will move over. So I've now got my aside element and all of the children of that aside element, and I'll add a little bit of an HTML comment here. And we'll say this. We'll call this the page aside, like so. And there we have our page aside element, which includes the two tertiary headings, the paragraphs, and the lists of affected railways. And of course, not to be outdone, at the bottom of the page we have our page footer. So I'll add a comment. And I'll add our footer element, aptly named. Oops. I'll tab this inside. Now, the footer, that's great. There's an inline element here called small that I could surround any text that that I would deem to be, say, fine print, for example, or legalese, or type that would otherwise be rendered in a very tiny font, because it's not really content that we need to consume, or that we need the end user to be that mindful of, except that maybe for legal reasons it needs to be there. So the small element is basically refers to, in a semantic or a meaning kind of way, fine print. So I would surround that, and it's an inline element, so the small requires something like a paragraph or something to contain it. So there is our page, completed page footer. So now, if we look at the page itself, and your code editor might actually do this, you can actually collapse different pieces, in the margin where the page numbers are. There might be little arrow toggles or plus or minuses. I can actually collapse these, and I can see the collapsed nodes of my document. So there's my body, which contains a header, a main, an aside, and a footer, and I can crack these open like so in my code editor. So it allows me to kind of navigate the page very easily and open and close pieces of blocks of code to get around. So and now I'm going to, of course, save this. Now, when you save that to and refresh the page, there may not be much, if any, in the way of visual changes. Maybe perhaps the only change here is the fact that this is rendered in a smaller type font by default. You can change that in CSS, make it even smaller if you want. But that header, which is up here, of course, the main element, which is from about here all the way down to here, the aside, which would span from here to here, and the footer, those are all there, and they can be styled in CSS. They just add structure to the page, so they make it easier from a styling perspective. They add some further semantic meaning to the content within it. So, content that's inside a main element or a header has different meaning. Those keyword phrases have different meaning, perhaps than if they resided inside a footer, a page level footer. So they add a little bit of additional meaning and structure to the page, which will assist with our CSS, will help with the search engine making sense of the content, may help with usability or assistive technology, accessibility technology, and also may in fact help with building some JavaScript into the page, add a little bit more utility or a little bit richer interaction.